We are live with City Manager, Peachtree Corners, Brian Johnson, here in Prototype Prime's podcast studio. We're running a little late. Brian's been coming from an important meeting, but I appreciate him coming out this once a month to be able to discuss things, especially after this city council meeting this past week. So we'll get into that, a lot to discuss. I just want to give a shout out again to Prototype Prime. They're our sponsor here. We do these podcasts at noontime usually from the podcast studio here. They're a 12,000 square foot facility here, an incubator here in the city of Peachtree Corners dealing with high-tech hardware type startups and providing 3D design studios, 3D printers, open space. Just about 14, 15 companies are actively working here. It's about a 12,000 square foot facility, and it's a great place to be if you're starting up. Next step would be the accelerator down the block, but this is where the seed starts, and lots of great people here. Great way to meet more people, and an event space in a way, because they've had things like hosting photography class, video. The LinkedIn guy came here. They do a Wednesday food truck, which was this past Wednesday. And I think it's the Wednesday after this Wednesday, be another one. So check out their website. But thank you, Prototype Prime, for having us. Now, down to business, because Brian has a lot of stuff to talk about, I think, with me. Tuesday night was a 1 o'clock night, 1 a.m. in the morning by the time you got out. And that city council meeting went on until almost midnight, I think. And I know that there's been a lot of talk on Nextdoor and a bunch of other places, Facebook and stuff about all sorts of things. So I guess the big one from that night was the entertainment district. That took about 2 hours to be able to discuss, 2 hours and a half.
Yeah.
I did read, I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I did read the agenda, and I read the packet that came in on it along with the conditions and all that. So tell me what happened, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, ultimately, what council was considering was an ordinance creating an overlay district. And what an overlay district is it's a zoning overlay that is overlaid over top of a base zoning in a specific geographic area. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they're done for specific reasons. And so council was considering an overlay district for the area around our town center. And the purpose of it was for us to look at what aspects of that area as it relates to certain things like potentially hours of our noise ordinance or other regulations and restrictions on alcohol. Right. And the reason that those were part of the exceptions to current citywide policy is because this overlay district we're creating is an entertainment-oriented overlay district. Right. And, of course, the core of this would be, I guess you would say, the town green. Mm-hmm. And what we know will be lots of events that will be happening on the town green. And so with this deal, with the town center's completion near the end of this year, beginning of next, and we knew we were going to start having events really in the spring of next year. We'll start having a lot of events. We knew that we had to take a look at some of the regulations that we have citywide and see which ones might need to be tweaked for this specific area.
Now, for those that don't know, this goes from the Earth Fair, what we call the Earth Fair Shopping Center area, across Peachtree Corners Circle between 141 and Medlock. The town center, that whole
triangle between 141, Medlock, and Peachtree Corner Circle.
Including the bank, I guess, falls into that just because it's part of that. And across to the Forum.
That is correct.
And then does it go across to the Ingalls? No. Okay, so 3 portions of land, if you will.
And that's what was part of the base ordinance that council was considering. Mm-hmm. There was conversation about whether or not the Forum should be in it. Okay. So that was debated itself. But anyway, so this entertainment district had a geographic area set, And inside of that, initially, I had looked at all the regulations related to alcohol and, in some cases, the noise ordinance, meaning for special events that may go beyond a certain thing. So what council ultimately got to is they were prepared to formally consider regulations as it relates to open container and regulations as it relates to where liquor stores can be located. They had already taken out...
So liquor stores normally would have been in an entertainment district?
No, liquor stores are regulated by an ordinance citywide.
Right. Okay.
This entertainment district, what it does is it creates a defined area in which there could be exceptions to other stuff. Okay. And a good example of that would be like on the town green, we may want to have instances where we allow people to BYOB, bring your own, beer or wine or whatever. Okay. We have a prohibition against that citywide. But in the town green area, there was talk about, we may want to have concerts where we allow it. So that's where these overlay districts come in, is it's an exception to citywide regulations. So they had defined, their consideration had been a defined space. They had already wanted to, we actually have a restriction against, we call it the anti-happy hour ordinance. Yeah. There was actually a restriction against restaurants that serve, or establishments that serve alcohol for on-site consumption, for them to change the pricing of their alcohol varied by time of day.
So no happy hour.
So no happy hour. And so there had been a discussion, well, do we let that be an exception in the entertainment district? Council had already said, no, if we do anything, we want that to be citywide. And they'll discuss that potentially at a later date. Okay. So that had already been cut out. But what they were really considering, the two main points were open container and an exception to the current regulations that regulate a package liquor.
Now, important to that was an approved liquor store that's being built on a standalone piece of property, right?
Well, okay.
So explain, because that was near racetrack, I think. Racetrack.
There were some people who wanted to make this about specific private endeavors to do something in this arena. But let me be clear. As it currently stands right now, the city does not currently hold, or has not issued, any approved site plan for any liquor store of any variety. We have not issued a package sale license to anybody to sell package liquor sales. So there's no business license out there? There's no one that's come to the city to say, we want to be able to do a private spirit store, like wine and spirit or something like that? Well, there's a lot of them that just have beer and wine that are associated with grocery stores.
I'm talking more like the tower type of...
Right. No. So there is currently, and there have been 3 other instances in which this has been the case at one other location, but there is currently, our understanding, because we're not party to private sector agreements but Racetrack's corporate office is currently has an application into the city for them to develop a parcel, or really 2 parcels, where Engineering Drive currently connects with Peachtree Parkway. But it would be on the other side of Peachtree Parkway, on the east side of Peachtree Parkway, where Engineering Drive does not currently exist.
So where would that be, just to frame it?
Well, Engineering Drive currently intersects on the west side of Peachtree Parkway already. What would happen is Engineering Drive would be extended across the parkway into Tech Park. It's currently an undeveloped wooded area. It's in between Tech Park, Technology Parkway itself, heading north, in between there and, Spalding, really, but there's a
road that goes into
there's
Career
another
Builders,
one. Is it West Tech?
West Tech, right. Okay.
All right, so there is currently an application in front of the city from Racetrack for them to develop an area there, and part of that would be they as part of their project, would construct Engineering Drive and connect it with Technology Parkway.
Okay.
And then once they create Engineering Drive, which will form essentially a four-way intersection right there with a median cut.
Traffic light probably.
It's permitted for it. I don't know, depending on traffic count, it may just be an open median cut.
Okay.
But there will be technically a four-way intersection, or at least an intersection, to say the least. Anyway, they would have to put in Engineering Drive, and once that's put in, we permit a curb cut off of Engineering Drive, not off of Peachtree Parkway, and they would be able to develop two pads.
Okay.
One is for their convenience store gas station. On the other side, we've been verbally told they were working on an arrangement with some private individuals wanting to do a liquor store, a freestanding liquor store.
So the street that they're going to put in, that they're going to pay for, splits that parcel in two.
Correct.
And so one side will be the gas station.
Correct.
Like a QT, I imagine, same type of look and feel. And then the other side, there's no building there.
There's nothing there right now. In fact, it's a hot mess topographically because where the road goes is on a ridge.
Yeah, they're going to have to.
And then the two pads are basically where it currently holes. So they got to shave off a ton of land, put them in the holes, surcharge it, compact it. They got to put in a bunch of retaining walls because they're cutting into the side of the hill there. Yeah. It's a major, I mean, you're probably talking 2 years before these things open.
So the game plan...
If it happens.
Right. And they haven't applied anything yet, obviously.
Well, they've applied. There's an application
that
includes pads.
Pads, okay.
We don't know what is going on there. Again, we've been verbally told that that's what's happening, but we have no idea whether it is. And again, we have not approved the final site plan.
Okay, so we don't. I mean, they own the land right now, but they don't.
I'm not even sure if Racetrack actually owns the land outright. TPA Group, who's basically the HOA of Tech Park, they were and may still be the property owner now. The arrangement with Racetrack may be conditioned upon site plan approval,
and that would make sense. That's business smart.
It is.
So putting in the pad, so you have no sense even if that would be a standalone one business. I guess the pad isn't that big. I mean, that parcel can't be that big.
The out parcel to this, not the convenience store gas station, but the out parcel, no, there's not a lot of property for it to do.
That would have to be one business,
yes, it would probably be one.
So it would have to be a standalone regardless, is my point.
Well, our ordinance currently requires only standalone liquor stores.
But only one building can go there in that space.
That's correct. And so that also
technically
is the case.
Would be a standalone regardless whether the regulation was there or not.
That's true.
Is what I'm asking.
They would have site plan constraints that probably, unless they had a really, really, really small space, probably just be for one.
Okay. All right. So do you have the application for that? But we don't know that it's going to be a liquor store.
Correct. All right. Okay. So and that's important because there were some that are associated with that development that did represent that this was about their location and their private enterprise and another private enterprise. And council, cities, unless, they're in a communist country, are not involved in picking who gets to go in what space. So when council was considering this, they were just considering whether or not to amend
when they were considering the amendment on the
entertainment district. Right. As part of that, the liquor store component was a variance from the current ordinance, which requires liquor stores to be standalone, freestanding structures of between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet.
Small.
Pretty small. The exception to that council was considering that would have only applied to the entertainment district would have been an exception such that a liquor store could have gone into existing space that did not necessarily need to be standalone, but it had to be 15,000 square feet or greater. So larger space. And the intent there would be that you bring in something like a Total Wine concept, where you have more variety and there's things like wine tasting classes and, food and wine,
a bit more upscale.
Absolutely. If you've been in a Total Wine, it's definitely more. It's more of a.
It's not the package store like.
It's not a It's not one where you kind of zip in and get it and you get out. It's more of ones has exotic. Beer, wine, and liquor of other places, and people tend to linger more to, what's this? And so that was the intent. So that was what they were creating. And what unfortunately was it became about the private individual who had worked towards potentially doing that in the old Earth Fair space, and then this other entity down the street. Council's consideration is neutral of those two, or at least you try to be. I mean, we're all humans, but it was supposed to be because if that part of the ordinance, the entertainment district ordinance, had remained, it would have applied anywhere in the entertainment district, not to one space. And we counted about five other spaces that would have had enough square footage for it to work one day.
To meet the 15,000?
15 or more, because you'd have Sprouts. Then over at the Forum, if it went away. Yeah, these are all went away. Nothing else has existed, but if it went away.
27 or 25,000. 23,000 square feet. Okay.
And so Sprout space, if they went away, and then the space currently occupied by Belk, Barnes & Noble, Home Goods, and Old Navy would probably be the only other ones that would apply. If they ever went vacant and somebody was prepared to pay Forum.
Is that even allowed there? I guess
it would have been, because they would have been part of the entertainment district.
Okay.
So it would have been allowed there. Okay. Should the owners wanted to? I mean, it just would have allowed it. It would not have mandated. And one more important point is the current restriction against proximity or regulation on proximity, which is 3,000 feet.
3,000 feet.
Linear feet, right. That means that currently, under our current ordinance, there could be as many as 6 within our corporate limits. That would be the max if you gamed it out perfectly. And that wouldn't have changed it. So that means that distance-wise, the entertainment district was not big enough that you could have had 2 in the entertainment district at any one. It would only have been 1 at a time, because if you had 1, it would have negated anywhere else, because they would have been inside of 3,000 square feet.
That was voted and passed, or is this a first read? Or?
No, this was the consideration. I'm just saying this is what they were considering.
Okay, so they didn't vote on it Tuesday night.
Oh, they did.
And did they pass?
No, the liquor store exception to current policy was removed. That section was removed.
Okay, so that's no longer in there.
That is no longer in there. But it was controversial because, again, there were some people associated with the other.
What was the vote on that?
When or
no,
what?
No, what was the vote? What was the 5-2? I mean, what was the...
I think it was 5-2, as a matter of fact. Now, understand that the vote was... There was a bunch of amendments that failed. There was an attempt to cut the Forum out of the entertainment district. And the thought there was that other entertainment districts that are out there, like Avalon, do not include a major thoroughfare in the middle of it. So it was like, how do you get one to the other?
And we'll get to that. Because we'll get to that. There's another
there was a reason why we felt the need to. But the other thing, though, too, is there was some confusion on some of this. Like, there were some people who thought, arguments made about, well, there would be now, if you allowed a liquor store in the Earth Fair space, there would be alcohol close to Wesleyan. Well, Earth Fair sold beer and wine, so it had already been there for a long time, not to mention the fact that anybody who serves alcohol has a responsibility on who they serve it to. That was one important point. Second point is, as a liquor store package, at no point, even with the open container component of our entertainment district, does not allow you to go into a package store and purchase it and come out and pour it into a red Solo cup and drink in the parking lot. The open container applies to establishments that have a pouring license for on-site consumption, which is another way of saying a restaurant. So the only way that you could have done it, but we don't have any bars there. And so the only way you could have done it is if you had gone into a restaurant and bought a drink there and had them put it into the to-go cup, and then you could have gone and drank it outside. But then if you wanted another one, you would have to go back into the restaurant, not into a liquor store or anything, back into a restaurant. And then, when you do that, of course, the restaurant has the responsibility. If you were like stumbling all over yourself,
to
there's
not
that,
serve
to not serve.
right.
Not to mention that there's public intoxication laws, drunken disorderly, and all those kind of things. They still regulate things, whether you drink it all inside and then stumble out.
But, regulations are regulations. You know how that is. People will abuse things anyway. And there's always going to be a problem. So regardless, if there was a bar, you're always going to have a bit of a problem because of a bar or a nightclub with entertainment. There's always some sort of problem unless you hold that security really tight. Now, when I saw the package store idea, I was totally against it. I am still totally against it within the entertainment district. I don't feel it works. This is my opinion. I don't feel it works within the philosophy of what the city wants to do with that area, to put within that area. Of course, it's not. We're saying it's not a package store. We're saying it's an upscale. I'm sure the city would probably condition certain things. I'm sure although it's not a special use permit, if someone comes in and that was part of the entertainment, they could come in and actually do it because it's allowed, right? They don't have to come in and ask for permission or to say, this is what we're doing. Can I have a special use permit to do this? It's an open regulation that would allow anyone
use by right.
Right. Is that correct?
You're showing off your former planning commission knowledge on that one. You are right. The original ordinance that was under initial consideration did have it as a use by right. Okay. It actually came up at the council meeting, and there had been enough votes to pass, I believe it would have been contingent upon the SUP applying for that also there. But if you were giving away your knowledge, that's some hardcore land use.
I'm just trying my best.
Land use right there.
But it makes sense to me if it went that route to say, okay, well, even though I don't like that personally, I don't feel that fits the philosophy. I don't think. I'll call it a package store, upscale or not. It's still a liquor store that's going to be somewhere, and I don't think it needs to be in the entertainment district. Across from racetrack, that's fine. And that's actually, I don't know how close. That's not that close to the Wesleyan, I don't think still. But I just think a special use permit would then have allowed the city to say, what type of package store you want to put in there? That we can say, someone comes and they really want it, they can at least say, listen, we're going to have a tasting room, we're going to have upscale cigar room, not just a humidor, but a place where you can sit. That would have been ultimately,
they would have wanted to add the special use aspect to it. So if it had been there, it would have been. That
would have been, because this way at least the city would have
had that one last bite at the apple. Yep.
Correct, because otherwise there's no responsibility, right?
Yeah, use by right. Well, you build into ordinances oftentimes standards, but sometimes standards don't take into consideration things that at the time of writing it you knew to take into consideration. And so having the special use permit always allows the governing body one last chance to kind of consider the whole thing.
Yeah, because everyone goes, it's interesting how these ordinances are written, and words mean a lot. If you just put the wrong comma in the wrong place, maybe commas shouldn't be placed in a place.
What's the old adage of, let's eat grandma? And, you have one, let's eat, comma, grandma, or just without a comma, let's eat grandma. Way different meanings with just the absence of one comma.
That's it. And I'm looking and I'm reading through this, and I don't want to be picayune about it because this really doesn't mean anything, but it's like I would want to sit and read through these regulations a little better, because liquor stores must be located at least 300 feet from churches. Is not the way that should be written, actually. It should be written, liquor stores are prohibited to be located within 300 feet. It's a nuance, and if you look at other regulations,
I see what you're saying.
Within, but that must be. That's like grandma thing, actually.
Yeah.
That's saying, well, you have to be located there. You can't be located somewhere else. So whoever's writing those things, they need to sharpen.
Well, that's why you have a city attorney hopefully is looking into that level of detail to make sure it's both not confusing or it's enforceable.
Yes.
Or I guess it's actually in written form articulating what the governing body is in verbal form wanting to see happen.
Because people always go to a lawsuit because they're like, oh, wait, look, that really doesn't mean what it says.
Or it says, I can, not I shall, so I didn't have to.
That's
things
right.
like that.
That's right. So, okay, so It didn't pass anyway. That part that was removed.
That
from
part
the
was removed.
Okay.
The main probably argument you got was that resonated really was there were some people who, despite the fact that you and I both know that zoning by its own nature has a discriminatory component to it.
Absolutely.
But there were some people who were like, it's not fair. If you're going to do this, you should make it citywide instead of specific to one area. That tended to be the biggest argument because, the one about because, this dates back more than 4 years because the group of individuals trying to do the standalone one as part of the racetrack one, they were part of the effort to have the referendum.
Yes.
And so one of the arguments that people were making was, and of course this was, I don't know, a little over 4 years ago or so, in Georgia, the only way that you can have package alcohol sale is for there to be a referendum making it so in that jurisdiction. So these individuals approached the city, and this was before I got here, but they said, we want to do something like this. What do we need to do? And the city said, well, you got to come up, you got to give us enough signatures that we can then put it on the ballot and let people vote. So they did. They went through an effort because they ultimately wanted to do a liquor store. So they were the ones who, and it's pretty common. The city said, you want to do it, get us the signatures, we'll put it on the ballot. They got the signatures. City put it on the ballot. It passed just under 80% for. Boom. And that was about 4 years ago. But in 4 years, nothing's happened. Now, there has been activity on two separate occasions on two different sites. One, the site we were talking about, there was an initial attempt to do it with a different, when TPA Group was still the one trying to develop it, versus Racetrack Corporate doing it. And then there were two attempts to do it with the owner of the property in between Black Walnut and Chase Bank.
Oh, really?
That out parcel right there. And don't know what happened, but two different times they were getting close to coming to the city, and then it just fell through, and then they went back, and then back. Anyway, there were some arguing to say that the other entity deserved or had earned the right to be there first. And so you got into the competitive thing, which council rightly was like, look, that's not for us to, So that.
Although I can see why people are saying that. I mean, in my mind, that the liquor part in the entertainment district shouldn't be there anyway. So it's a moot point to me, and now it is certainly a moot point, unless, of course, it comes back again. I can't imagine that coming back again.
I mean, I can't sit here and say, the only thing, again, the one, I guess, argument against it that tended to resonate because, saying, well, that's not fair to these guys didn't,
Yeah, I mean, that's...
and you had a few that felt like, well, that's not, that shouldn't be part of the entertainment district, which is not an illegitimate argument. But the other one tended to be, if you're going to do this, then just make it citywide. So the only way I could see it is if the city felt, the mayor and council felt like, well, you know what? If we're going to do it, let's not isolate it to one location, which would not necessarily mean it would go then in the entertainment district. It would just be like, look, if you want to have a liquor store in the city, still with the restrictions on distance, you can either have a freestanding one between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet, or, and then they could have some standard for you to go into existing space, which would be much larger potential. That's the only way I see this ever seeing the light of day again.
Even if that happened, I would think it should always happen as a special use permit to property.
I think it's fair to say that would be guaranteed to be part of it, having heard from council. So I think that would definitely. But again, I have no reason to believe it is. It's just that if it ever was, it would more be about the city saying, we heard you.
Right.
You didn't like what you felt was the non-competitive nature of this thing, even though, again, zoning is inherently discriminatory by saying you can't do certain things here and ever.
Right.
But it's a fair argument to make, so that would be the only way that I would think.
Plenty of times there's businesses where I remember being on the planning commission where we would prohibit tattoo parlors, liquor stores, auto, with 8 bays or something.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. That's why it really exists, to be perfectly honest with you, is to prohibit certain things or to encourage certain things.
Right. And so that made sense to me. So we chewed up about half an hour on discussing this. But
that's better than the 2.5 hours that we did at the council meeting.
I'm sorry I missed that. I guess I'm a junkie for those things. Some people think it's punishment, but I would have been interesting to see that happen.
It's interesting, both those. It was interesting who spoke for it. As it relates to the Earth Fair space, was the owner of Noble Finn and the owner of Pub Tent.
See, I don't
both were like
that, really.
And part of this might be driven from the fear that if that wasn't going to occupy the space, what could go in? Because let's remember something: Earth Fair is the guarantor of that lease, meaning that they're on the hook to pay the lease amount regardless. Mm-hmm. And the ownership company that owns that shopping center is out of California, so they're not local. And unfortunately, what you'll see is this is, from my perspective, the worst situation to be in when you're trying to keep a bad tenant somewhere, because you got an owner who's not local, so they're only worried about money.
Right.
I don't want to say that, but maybe not. They're not quite as worried about the local community as if you were.
It's like a REIT that owns property.
It is.
Here. I mean, they don't.
So they are an absentee. So you got an owner, and then you've got a major space that has somebody who is guaranteeing that lease for an extended period of time, and then they leave. So now they're sitting on this lease payment that they have to pay unless they find somebody to sublease it from them. And since they're not the owner, they don't really care what the tenant might do to the surrounding area. They just want to take that off their books. And so,
take a loss, but I get where you're going.
Oh, but they'll take those are the ones where you find really. It's almost, those are the ones where the community does the whole head scratching. Hey, city, why did you let that use go in this location? And the city's like, the lease, we didn't have a choice. The leaseholder subleased it, and they just want to have somebody pay what they're guaranteed, to pay on the lease.
That property actually has restrictions on it, though, if I remember correctly. There are some restrictions, and as an overlay district that was voted on, doesn't the overlay have certain restrictions too?
There are some. It couldn't be like. We're not talking about the really bad stuff that you would, like a strip club.
Strip club couldn't go there without a special use permit.
Correct. Or, an auto repair place where they try to... No, I mean, there's some things that they can't, but there could be some, lower-end retail stuff that are oriented towards, things like that are not in keeping...
A consignment store.
Correct. I mean, there are some things that... Now, it's not the end of the world, don't get me wrong. No. It's just that sometimes... that those are the kind of things that are right for it. And then for those who make a living off of activity, like a Noble Finn or a Pub 10, they love people to come to that location for other reasons and then say, while we're here, let's go have a drink, or let's just eat right here, we're here, whatever. So I don't discount the fact that there's some concern. I mean, the owner of the property where the Hotel Indigo and everything also expressed concern about the sublease component. I invested a lot of time, energy, and money in this, and right across Peachtree Corners Circle, I could have something that is not really trying.
I get that, but
it may not happen though.
Right. I mean, I think there's enough things that can't happen there badly that it's probably not. It's not going to be life or death there. I think better than putting in a liquor store there. I keep saying liquor store because that's what that is. And to me, seeing that, when I think of an entertainment district, I don't think of that in the entertainment. I think of maybe a concert hall, maybe something else. Now, is a concert hall any worse for what it might bring? I don't know. But I know a lot of people would like to see a venue like that there possibly. But anyway, all right, enough said on that one. There's another thing that happened Tuesday night that I found interesting because I didn't realize was happening Tuesday night because I don't think it was anywhere on the agenda actually, and that was was it on the agenda?
Sure, right here.
Where consideration of approval of the City of Peachtree Corners 5-year capital improvement plan. Right, I get that, but no, that wasn't spelled out. So I think what people are imagining is that the bridge has come back, the Phantom Bridge has come back, I'll say that I don't have a problem with the pedestrian bridge going over 141. I do if it was $10 million, but not a reasonable pedestrian bridge done nicely would be fine. But that's what's in there, right? If I understand correctly,
yes.
$1.5 million was budgeted.
Of the four is the upcoming year of the capital improvement plan.
And $4 million is the expected budget.
Total.
So that wasn't spelled out in the agenda.
But I mean, to do that, we would have had to spell out all
I get
12
that. Yeah.
capital improvement projects that are being.
And I didn't go look through the packet at that point until I heard what happened, and I was like, wow, look, it's in the packet. I mean, it's in there.
Because the 5-year CIP plan is part of the backup document.
Right.
So
the $1.5 million is made to do what now?
Well, remember, when we're doing this, I have to stretch it over fiscal years. So I'm looking at what am I going to expend in the next 12 months, starting July 1. And so the pedestrian bridge has a $4 million price tag.
Okay.
I'm not going to expend all $4 million in the next fiscal year, the next 12 months. So I had to estimate how much I will. And the design of the bridge is going to be where I'm starting to expend money now.
Right.
And that's the architects and engineers to do all that kind of work. And then near the end of the year, you might start getting into actual site work.
Moving.
Geotechnical samples, site prep, compaction, pre-ordering the span. Because that'll be constructed elsewhere and then trucked in.
That's why it's so not inexpensive, but $4 million is actually a reasonable price.
Yes, that is why. That is the main reason I was able to take a price tag that was
8 or 10 million.
Yeah, it was 10 plus probably.
Now that span, how wide is that span going to be, or the estimated?
The exact width, you have to ask city engineer. Look,
20 feet. I mean,
it's enough. It's nice. Wide enough that not only are the clear zones, maintained, but you could, widen 141 if it was ever done and not have to move the bridge.
Right. Okay. No, I get that because you actually need for it to be wide enough to do that, right?
Correct. DOT would not have permitted it if we did. Nor do we want to do anything to where we're like, well, one day we might.
Yeah.
However you feel about doing that, but one day we may have to.
Right.
Yeah, and then we're like, we got to tear a bridge down and do it.
One day we'll go to 6 lanes. That's inevitable.
I suspect as such.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that thinks it's not is just not living in the right world. That will go to 6 lanes in 20 years probably.
And maybe sooner, yeah.
Or maybe sooner. So, but what I meant was the width, not the width maybe. How wide
how wide
the actual
it is.
piece. I mean, is it like only 10 feet wide as a pedestrian thing, or is it more expansive?
No, it is. Let's see. I want to say it's either...
Just curious, because it's not any of the original designs.
Correct. 13, 15 feet, somewhere around there. And that's the widest we can go and have it prefabbed elsewhere.
Okay. Where it's going to have maybe benches or... Right. It'll
have that on there, yes. But where you really save is not having to construct it there with steel and everything.
Right. So it's one piece coming across.
Correct. I think it may be broken into 2 and then put together. But it's prefabbed elsewhere and then brought in.
And that's going to have an elevator that's big enough to have people come in with their bikes and stuff like that.
That's correct.
Is that still the game plan?
That is still the case.
Okay, and it's going to have
it will be ADA accessible.
ADA accessible with ramps, I guess, or because of the elevator?
The ramps are a phase 2 of this.
Oh, okay.
They're not going in as a part of it because the ramps, you have to. There's so much real estate and so many linear feet to have the slope. Be not steep enough that you can't use it if you're in some sort of a wheeled.
So that may come later.
It will come later.
Okay.
It just, we want to get the bridge in before, and with, again, the elevator, if somebody doesn't want to go up the steps.
Sure. If
before we start really, or can't, before we really start getting activity between the two.
Okay.
The ramps are a part of this. The property reserved for it will always be reserved. It's being designed as a part of this. It's just that it's construction will not be part.
Is that $4 million price tag?
Does not have the ramps.
Does not have. That'll be separate. Okay. Of course, people may beg, how much is that separate?
Well, it depends on how really nice. You can go anywhere from $2 to $4 million.
Really?
For both sides, depending on how long and what other amenities. Because, when you have ramps, in some of these cases, it's got to actually circle.
Yeah, I've seen some of them like that.
And so then you have this space that you got to figure out what to do with it, or sometimes it's like concrete steps for people to. So you can make it whatever you want, but that's a separate capital improvement discussion for future fiscal years, not for the next two at least.
There was a comment online by Matthew Hauser. Hey, Matt. Thanks for watching. His statement is someone could build a freestanding liquor store in the entertainment district under the current ordinance. Is that correct?
That's a good point. As only our current chair of our planning commission might know some of this stuff, which is good. Matt is right. Our current ordinance does not restrict a freestanding liquor store anywhere in the city that's zoned for it, subsequent to a special use permit, but that somebody wants to build it. So, for instance, the pad in between Chase Bank and the Black Walnut could have, if somebody, in fact, that's why 2 different times there was an attempt to do one there.
And currently you don't need a special use permit? No,
you do need a special use permit for all of it. Yeah, so there would have still been that final step that council would have had to say yes or no. Okay. But there could be, and technically, if there was some other property you could build on, I guess the Chile property the city bought, you could have one go there.
If that was sold.
Piedmont Bank, I believe, has enough property. Would they want to do this? Yeah. They could do so. If somebody met all the other setback requirements or whatever, Matt's correct that you could have one in the entertainment district as is. So it wasn't like, oh my God, that they're opening up the entertainment district for a liquor store. There still could be one.
But someone has to expend quite a bit of money. There's a tower, a liquor store on Roswell Road near where I work. They built a whole standalone building, beautiful building actually. It's 2 stories. They really nicely done inside, tastings and stuff like that. So it can be done. I just don't expect that it would be in the entertainment district, but it is allowed, Matthew, with an SUP.
Yeah, he's right.
With the special use. All right, so the bridge thing that felt like okay, I'm good with that. I like the $4 million. I researched it well enough on my own to know that $4 million is not a bad price tag for a good pedestrian bridge, well made, well done.
Yeah, and it's not, what we didn't want to do is also come off of the first dollar amounts that were associated the first time that the city socialized the bridge concept.
Yeah, that was way.
You could have the pendulum swing the other way, and you put up this just base rudimentary bridge with nothing special. And what we feel is you lose an opportunity to maybe brand or landmark an area by having that. And a good example of that is like up in Johns Creek. There is a grade separated crossing under 141.
Yeah, I've been there, yes.
Almost no one knows that there is a tunnel that allows you to go from one side of 141 to the other.
I don't think anyone really uses that, quite frankly.
They don't. There was some other. I've talked to their city manager and others up there, and there's the tunnel part does have some people kind of get freaked out a little bit if it's later or whatever. But in the city's case, we felt like if we did a tunnel, and aside from the fact that a tunnel is more expensive, because we have some other utility conflict issues and everything anyway. But we would lose the ability, again, to have something as a landmark. Now, not over-the-top iconic, but at least landmark. And our intent is at least to put Peachtree Corners in well done letters that are lit at night.
That would be nice.
So that at some point we hope that people will be like, let's go such as, where's that? You know where that bridge is over 1-5? Oh, yeah. It kind of fits into the forum, has already kind of cachet and name recognition. Yeah. We believe our town center will, especially with the town green and then the bridge and all of it combined, kind of creates what we believe is our downtown, because now we're linking two halves of our downtown across what is really a sea or a river. It's just a river of cars.
Right. And now you have a reason that entertainment district overlay actually works well because of the bridge.
That's correct. Excellent. And so now we feel like we can do something at the forum like on the other side, because you have connectivity grade separated so that you're not interacting with vehicles. Right. And that was important. And the last thing is remember, on a bridge, we'll be able to remove at-grade crossings. So there won't be a pedestrian actuating the crossing signal at grade, causing the north-south traffic to sit there longer.
There's actually no reason to be doing that when you can take the bridge.
Well, we're going to remove it and put something in the median to prevent somebody from jaywalking across.
Oh, really?
Now, of course, if they did it in the middle of the lane, we can't put something there at an intersection, but they won't be able to.
Now, the bridge is there, and the plan, that capital plan still has the bridge on the south side or no? By Holcomb Bridge down that way by Target?
No, not well, yes.
Because at one point there was.
Ultimately, the 5-year CIP has $8 million in pedestrian safety measures.
Right.
And that's not, we have a separate sidewalk, about $500,000 for sidewalks. That's separate from that. But we've got $8 million over the course of it. We're allocating $4 million here. Nothing to say that the other $4 million can't go down, near Holcomb Bridge. That has been considered and talked about in very serious, way. So that may be where the other $4 million is spent.
Is there anything new coming up in the next few weeks or in the next month or so that hasn't been discussed yet or socialized yet that you want to share?
I mean, not really. I mean, one of the big things is we're going to have our solid waste contract. Council approved me executing the contract. Okay. And so we'll get them in line for a July 1 fiscal year. Now, it's not going to go into effect till January 1 because that's when our current contract expires.
And you guys chose the company already?
We did. That's what they were awarded it to Waste Management.
Waste Management.
Who was not only was scored the highest through the whole vetting process, but they had the lowest bid.
And they're, if I remember correctly, they're going to provide brand new trucks as part of the agreement.
So part of this is they're buying brand new trucks, compressed natural gas, so they're much quieter. The good thing about that is not just that they're new and that Waste Management, as the largest waste hauler in the world, has a very robust preventative maintenance program. So I believe that our issue with hydraulic fluid dumping out is not going to be the case like it is now. But these trucks are only going to be used and assigned to the city.
Right. There's a staging location in the city, I guess?
Well, no. And here's how they're doing it. And mind you, all 4 of the respondents to the bid responded this way, but they're breaking the city into 5 zones. And they're going to pick up 1/5 of the city every day, not the whole city in one day.
Okay.
So one of the problems with our current one is it's rare if they get the entire city in one day. We're just too big for somebody to do that. And so there's constantly missed neighborhoods or missed pickups of none of the recycling got picked up, or an entire, none of, Neely Farm got picked up because they just run out of time. And so we're really too big to do it all in one day. That's one. Okay. Second problem with doing that is currently the trucks that pick up our trash on just Mondays, Tuesday through Friday, are picking up 1/3 of unincorporated Gwinnett. So those trucks are also being shared with
So that's not going to happen now.
That won't happen anymore. So now these trucks are only assigned to the city.
Okay.
So they're working 1/5 of it every day. They'll definitely be able to do it. The other good thing is this contract signs an exclusive franchise to one entity for both residential and commercial.
So, and we discussed this at one point. So those companies that have, at this point, as of the vote or as of January 1st or June 1st, if they already have a commercial contract to get their garbage picked up, they can keep that until it expires.
That's correct.
And
Their
then
current contract, but then they can't renew it now that council adopted this. So
as of what they...
I think it's going to be this last Tuesday night.
Okay.
It may be when I execute it. So July 1 may be the safe one to say, is as of that point, their contract would play out as is, and then when they're time to renew, they roll into the city. So now the city is saying all solid waste are through us.
Okay.
And then we just have an exclusive, we grant that service to a third party and say, you provide this on our behalf.
Now, if I remember,
and then they do.
And the garbage, they're going to replace the cans, hopefully not smaller than the last ones,
brand
which
new
was
cans, brand new cans. It'll be a 96-gallon household.
Okay.
But then the recycling will be a wheeled with a lid, 65-gallon.
Okay.
So it's not as big as 96, but it is wheeled. It's not going to be the open blue bin,
right.
which a lot of people don't like because, A, it's too small in some cases, and 2, it's hard to take down there sometimes. Now you'll have 2 wheeled ones.
Okay.
The 65-gallon clearly is smaller than the 96, but...
And I didn't know this. I guess they don't take glass.
They don't take glass as a recycling item anymore.
Right.
I mean, you take glass, you just have to put it in your household because the recycling facilities are not.
Okay.
And the problem is because the glass gets contaminated with other things, or it breaks, and so it just makes it hard. And so the last thing is on the exclusive franchise is we struggle with some of the commercial waste haulers violating our noise ordinance.
And they can't
by
do that
getting
now.
out early and tipping dumpsters and loud activity prior to 7 a.m.
Yeah, no matter how much you restrict that, they still do that.
They do, and we have 9 different commercial waste haulers. So we get reports of this, and, oftentimes it's after the fact, so we don't know. And Forum's a good one. Amberfield is a neighborhood that borders the Forum. Right. And there's a bunch of different commercial waste haulers that are emptying different companies'
and banging
Belk's has their own different one than Trader Joe's, and it's different than, and so we'll get a complaint, but we don't know who to go to or whatever. Waste management, now, first of all, we know if it happens, it's only one company. And 2, they're giving the city access to their RFID tags on all of their trucks.
So you'll be able to track.
I'll be able to track and know where they were and know whether they tipped. They actually have a counter on there, and if it tips something, like a truck being on the road at 5:30, I don't have a problem with. Yeah. If they're just on the road getting but if they're tipping,
right,
and we'll be able to know that. So if that happens, we have one point of contact to say at this location.
And you can also see whether garbage was picked up or not. Because
that's correct.
They might have done that route and stuff.
So that'll help with that. We're very excited about that part of it.
It's using smart technology. That makes sense. Clippings, are they still? Because I know my waste hauler takes clippings now, but will that happen?
Well, you pay extra for it.
I do.
Yeah, they're offering the same thing.
Okay.
Yep.
And bulk collection, same thing if you call in advance?
Except that bulk is a pay-as-you-throw.
Pay-as-you-throw.
Yeah, so in other words, if you want bulk, if you got a couch that you want to get rid of, you call, and depending on the item, it could be anywhere. I think it ranges from like $5 to $20 for the pickup, depending on how big your pile of stuff is. But
not like 1-800-JUNK or something. Or...
No. Waste management comes out and does it.
Yeah, no,
it's
but
just
I'm saying
that they
it won't
don't
be as expensive, I guess.
No, correct. And we did some surveys, and a very small percentage of the population uses bulk.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
Very rare that you use bulk because either people get rid of it on their own, they take it somewhere, call somebody, or get Waste Management has something called the Bagster that you can buy in Home Depot or Lowe's. Yeah. And it folds up into it's about that thick and about that square, and it opens up into basically a temporary dumpster that's about as big as this room.
Really?
And the sides come up about that high. And then it has 2 really large hooks on each end, and you can pile that thing as big as you want, and then they send a special truck that takes the 2 loops and then cranes it into the back of the...
I never knew that.
So if you're demoing something,
really,
and you're not a commercial waste hauler, you can go out there and get that, and they'll come out, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that, especially if you're doing your own DIY stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool. God knows I could probably use that. I have tons of stuff in my backyard to get rid of now. I think that's it. I think we covered some major things.
I mean, Fiserv also.
Fiserv, yeah. Let's do one quick thing on that. Then. That was also approved, right?
It was approved. Lot of conditions locking it down. I mean, in a nutshell, what you've got is the development for what anyone can ever see from the road. You won't be able to see anything.
Because they're essentially, if you're looking from the road, it won't start until way in the back.
So off of East Jones Bridge, there's what we call, or the developers call, a throat. And that's kind of a throat that, gets you to where before you can't even develop until you're around the corner and you can't see it. So no one will ever.
Oh, yeah. And all that.
The only people that are going to see it are there's a few houses between the current entrance and Simpson that have driveways directly onto East Jones Bridge that have backyards that are there. But even then, it's really about still the throat area. Okay. So the main ones affected are some of the houses in Riverfield. That subdivision has 2 streets that have houses lining the entire, would that be north side of the Fiserv property? Yeah. They have a very robust buffering requirement to buffer site between
100 feet.
The 2.
Yeah.
Well, it's in more cases inside of the current road that exists there. We're not letting anything between the current road as it currently lays and the edge of it. So in some cases it's more. But they've agreed to a 75% opacity at the 3-year mark, meaning 75% of the sight line from the Riverfield subdivision will be blocked.
With what?
Plant material.
Oh, okay.
They're replacing the entire fence all the way along. There's a 6-foot wooden fence that's in disrepair. They're going to place it with an 8-foot wooden fence. They're pushing all their height. They're using the topography, and they're pushing all their height over the ridge. So all of the stuff close to Riverfield, the closest, are restricted to 3 stories or less, which all the homes in Riverfield are 3 stories. So there's no difference there. As you get in deeper into the property, we start to let them get up to 65 feet. Right. And then when you crest the ridge, 85 just on the other side, and then all the way down at the bottom near the river, we'll let them get up to 120 feet.
So in stories, that 120 feet is 7 stories.
It could be. It could be less if they want to have higher ceilings on their floors.
Right. Which is not.
But yeah, maximum would be
7 stories.
7 stories.
Down on the end.
On typical floor heights.
Right. And 4 stories, I guess, is the smaller, or 3 stories is
3 stories is near the Riverfield because, again, that'll be the townhomes and the cottages, freestanding in often cases. But, again, that's no different than Riverfield itself.
How far off the river are they? I mean, there's Riverkeeper, there's conditions as far as the river goes.
They can't go down into the floodplain.
How far
Have you ever been down there?
Not that end of the property, actually.
The river is actually well below. I mean, it's 50, 60 feet, in some cases, below the ridge where the old Simmons Mattress headquarters is. So down below there, nothing could ever be built down there. Now, there is going to be, it had to be a separate conversation, but there will be conversation coming up about having down at the river, down where you can't build anything permanently, to be restricted in a conservation easement fashion for the public to potentially have access along the river down there.
Similar to what I've seen in Kiowa and Seabrook Island, where you can go put walkways, but it has to be pervious, and it can't endanger the species that live there.
Right. There would be something like that, but the point is allowing the public in some capacity down right along the river. we got to talk that through. That wasn't part of the application, so it's a separate conversation. But that'll be happening before too long on all the parties involved, just to get it to where, if nothing else, in the grand scheme, that one day you have this trail that goes all the way down Chattahoochee, like through Gwinnett County, that there's a way to link up all these spaces. So
is that then? That's supposed to be a 55 active community. Was that restricted in any way?
It is, at least now. Of course, the Housing of Older Persons Act, which is federal law related to housing discrimination, that does restrict us. We can't say 100% of the people that live in there have to be 55 or older. Can't do it. That's discriminatory because, let's say you were 55 and your wife was 54, and you wanted to go in there and you pass away. Does your wife get evicted and things like that? Right. So what we did is we made the federal law also, the Housing of Older Persons Act also had some exemptions, some things that you could do to make sure that you were not violating federal housing law in discriminatory fashion. So what we were able to do is it is restricted to, at the execution of a lease or a sale of the house, as the case may be, at least one of the people have to be 55 or older. That's as strong as we can make it. You can't make it to where it's both. Okay. But at least one has to be 55 or older.
If I'm just thinking this way, if I bought it as an investment and wanted to rent it to someone, do I care whether they're 55 or older? But I'm 55 or older and I can purchase it and rent it.
There are. There's a few things, again, HOPA's, Housing of Older Persons, restricts us from doing, but do know that for them to be able to do this, they actually have to actively recruit for only active seniors. Right. They can't have things that are attractive to kids, like playgrounds or open space for ball, playing ball or whatever. They have to have on-site.
But they can have open space for pickleball.
No, not that kind of stuff, even now. Oh, wow. Besides, we got enough pickleball facilities at Lifetime that you don't need.
Active community.
You can't. You have to have some sort of an assisted living component to it.
So they must do that, because if I understood correctly,
they have to do that.
So at one point they said that would be towards the tail, phased in later, in case market changes and they decide not to do it. Is that
they cannot cross the halfway threshold on their units without building the memory and assisted living care.
That was a condition placed in by City Council.
Yep.
All right.
So height pushed to where no one will see it. Internally, it'll be developed. They're using examples like Serenbe and other places where kind of new urbanism design. Okay. You're probably familiar with some of that stuff. So they'll develop the property, really healthy buffer. A maximum on the total units and minimums on the type of diverse housing that they have to do. There are minimums of cottages, townhomes, detached. So they've got to have a diverse.
And a total unit count of somewhere around
916.
916. All right.
So
that's a lot of stuff.
It is. Look, in the grand scheme of things, having an active community development is way better than it going back to being an office use. Because we definitely need empty nester housing, which is oftentimes a term. We get calls for that all the time. That's one. And two, from a traffic count, because again, the owners of the property have a right to develop it, and it's currently zoned O and I, so they could build a bunch of offices or renovate the current ones. And the downside to that, aside from just we lose an opportunity to have empty nester housing, is traffic. Traffic issues on East Jones Bridge are exacerbated when they're done at rush hour. So if you had a big office campus in there, you're going to have the crush of people coming in when school is in session and then leaving at the same time that you're doing.
I mean, at the height of Fiserv, they had a lot of people there. I think well over 2,000 or 3,000, I think, employees.
I think so too.
So I mean that was reasonable. Now we're talking about 900 units with at least 1,800 people, maybe. Right, I would think reasonable.
But not all of them are going to be driving, because some of those units are assisted living memory care. Right. And then even the ones that are driving are not crushing in at morning rush hour and leaving in afternoon.
Whole different population.
Correct. It's kind of a even stream of traffic. So, look, I live down there.
Yeah.
I don't want traffic any more than anybody else, but I wasn't prepared to pony up $15 million and sit on the property and not do anything with it.
The city can't buy everything.
Right, or private. And so, I think from a traffic standpoint and a use standpoint, it's a pretty good alternative. I'm pretty pleased with.
So, I mean, okay, and that's cool. I figured that would get approved at some point. I'm glad to hear there's conditions on the that forces at a halfway point at least that they must be building other things that they say they are going to build. Because that's always the problem, right? You get a developer doing something. It's like going back to the apartment complex, the Roberts property with the Indigo Hotel, which I don't know if it's still an Indigo Hotel. I don't know if they signed the franchise.
They're under. I mean, I have no reason to believe that's changed.
So, they have to build a certain way too. Otherwise, they can't get that apartment complex up because they need to be able to get the hotel up at a certain point. So those are good conditions. I'm happy.
Well, I mean, I had to spend a lot of time with the developers trying to work through this, and it's a healthy, typical tug of war between a city who would love to have ultimate control of every little thing, and then the developers who don't want to relinquish any control, especially early in the process when they don't know the market conditions later on.
And things can change.
And the last is, I always had to tell them, and they were, I thought, pretty honest and forthcoming with what they're wanting to do. But I kept saying, look, you guys sound good, but you could flip that. You could sell this property to somebody else. So it's not about you guys. It's about who may be in your seat one day. And so,
and you put the conditions to the developer too, I think, right? It's attached.
It's not to the property.
It's not attached to the property.
No, it is attached to the property.
So they
it's a
have
condition
to follow.
of the yes.
Right. So anyone that buys it still has to contend with those conditions, or come back and ask for a change.
Yes, they can always come back and ask, but at least we're still in the driver's seat because they bought it knowing the conditions.
That's right. So a couple of quick things too, since we're past the hour. One is the turnabout.
Roundabout? Yep.
Roundabout. The roundabout at Medlock and Peachtree Corners Circle, when is that going to...
Well, we're in,
any thought?
Property acquisition.
Okay,
we've got some of it. We've got a couple of parcels that the owner and the city are not quite seeing eye to eye on value.
Okay.
So we're working through that. But I hope to have that resolved and maybe... late this summer, starting construction.
Okay, good. And the 6 acres or so that I forget the acreage that the city bought. Any new thoughts on where that's going?
Oh, that new. Okay, we're not going to do anything, including even discussing what we should do with it, until the town center is open and the town green has been operating for a while, for us to see how the town center is operating, because then we think we'll know then a better idea of what could we do to enhance the experience.
Excellent.
It could be everything from making the town green bigger, or a performing arts center, or a,
So there's nothing more on the performing arts center.
We're not even talking about that right now. I mean, there's interest. It's just that right now they all agreed, council that is, that let's not do anything until town center is open and we watch how it operates, and then we'll know better.
Amy Massey said thank you about your foresight and planning for the future of Chattahoochee River Trail System. Thank you, Amy. Going to Holcomb Bridge Road and Jimmy Carter, there's improvements being made there as well.
Holcomb Bridge Road and Jimmy Carter.
That was dealing with, I guess, that was dealing...
was that the intersection improvements?
Yes,
okay.
So. But what's going on down there? I figured since... What's going on down there? Anything new? Any new development that's being figured? A lot of people feel that. I have to throw this out there. A lot of people feel that, and we've been talking the whole hour about the town center area, entertainment district, town center, pedestrian bridge, really all around one area. And some people feel the other parts of the district, other parts of the city are being ignored. Anything new going on that you want to share?
Okay, yeah. I mean, so we just got done with a resurfacing and restriping project on Winters Chapel to enhance traffic and a rapid flashing beacon pedestrian crossing near the Walmart Marketplace.
Okay.
We just put a long stretch of sidewalk on Winters Chapel. down near where it intersects with Spalding.
Okay.
We've got a widening project. Part of the capital improvement project included money for us to jointly work with the county, because it's an approved joint SPLOST project, to widen Spalding from Winters Chapel up to Holcomb Bridge.
Oh, really? That's
Including
really,
putting in
wow.
a slip lane on Winters Chapel as it intersects into Spalding. Right now, a lot of traffic wants to go towards Holcomb Bridge, and instead of having to stop at a dead stop, it'll be a dedicated slip lane with flexible bollards for a period of time until you're equal to the traffic coming from Roswell on Spalding. And then ultimately it'll just be 4 lanes all the way up to Holcomb Bridge. It will squeeze down for a year or so while we get all the environmental stuff worked out to put in a bridge over the culvert at Crooked Creek.
Okay.
That's the choke point that forces us to go down to 2 lanes.
Yeah.
And we want it to be 4 lanes, so we got to put a bridge. Currently, it's just a culvert and a couple of pipes. That's being done in that area.
Okay.
The Spalding Holcomb Bridge intersection is being redone. It's currently being conceptually looked at using Weatherburn and what's the other one? Something Bottom. The one actually in Sandy Springs that connects. Anyway, there's using some of the other side streets, like Weatherburn connects Spalding and Holcomb Bridge. There's a mirror image of that on the one corner that Sandy Springs is behind the Publix. You can get off and cut around and come in.
Yeah, I can envision. I don't know what the name of that street is.
Yeah, River Exchange.
Okay.
That's what it is. Anyway, using those and redoing the intersection, trying to do that. There's some work there. Trying to think of what else we've got in that area.
We've got some too that you might be hearing business-wise?
That I can talk about. No.
But there are things.
Yes, there are things, including the old Outback Shopping Center. We're talk about some changes there. The multi-use trail along Crooked Creek, behind Meadow Rue, and those are. We've elevated that to really a phase that we want to do sooner rather than later.
Okay.
We're looking at some enhanced street lighting on Peachtree Corners Circle, maybe some traffic.
Maybe going all the way down.
Yeah, between Holcomb Bridge and PIB.
Okay.
A lot of apartments in that area. A lot of people walk, and so lighting it up. I mean, it's not necessarily inadequate, but I'm talking about really lighting it up.
Yeah, it gets dark around there sometimes, and I can't see,
So, we're still, and again, a lot of this town center stuff, too, some of it is, other than like the parking deck at the town center, that's all the private sector.
Yeah.
That's where they're interested, but we are trying to push. Working on the old LA Fitness, they moved, and that space is open.
Yeah, that is open. And
So, been meeting with people, looking in there. So,
you mean that whole thing, or just the people going into
both?
All right, that would be interesting. That's been like that for a long time.
It's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of land in that.
There is.
That place.
Yes, there is.
That could almost be a tear down and build up.
Yeah, got a couple of those.
Really?
With the right owner and right financing, they could almost hit the reset button and really do it different.
I would think. I mean,
because some of those are built where it's old, meaning you have the parking up front, a sea of parking, and then all the stuff is pushed way to the back. And it's kind of being flipped now, where you want the storefronts closer to the thoroughfares and the parking in the back.
I could almost see. I remember when I got a really good impression some years back when I saw a post property that was. It was all retail downstairs. It was office for a few floors, and then condos above it. And I was like, that would be at some point. That would be great for Grand County,
mixed use, a true mixed use building.
Absolutely, and I could see it there more than anywhere because of where it is.
We agree.
Yeah, really cool. That'd be good. Someone, Jeffrey Robinson, mentions. Here's a question: has Colonial signed off on PATH? I don't know what that
Jeffrey
means.
You know, I was thinking of him when I was talking about the Crooked Creek Path. In fact, he made some suggestions about the intersection of Peachtree Corners Circle and Holcomb Bridge that we've actually formally submitted to DOT, and it looks like that they're favorable to some of it. So he lives in the area, and he met with me recently and had some good suggestions. Colonial has weighed in on us using that section of the pipeline for the trail. They've gotten, there were about 2 years ago, Colonial had two major pipeline accidents in Alabama. One that had an explosion and killed some people.
Oh my!
So their pipeline, or I don't even remember, it was like 2.5 years ago. The gas prices in the Atlanta area specifically were affected because of
that.
They had a leak and they had to shut it down for a period of time. Anyway. They became much more strict about who uses their easement for what. And so they don't let anybody put any fill material over where they're. And so in some cases, we did have to find other locations when the topography was so steep that we were going to need to bring in fill material.
Right.
They're like, nope.
They won't let you do that.
But when we didn't have to do it and it's wide enough, we can just move it to one side of their thing and we got it.
They're good with that?
Yes. And the beauty for us there is we can put in more trail for less money because we're not having to acquire real estate to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why that section of our trail system, the Crooked Creek behind the Meadow Rue, really from the corner of Peachtree Corners Circle, Holcomb Bridge, and coming around and linking up with Spalding near where Crooked Creek goes underneath and where Sandy Springs is putting in a park. They're putting in a park there, and so we've redesigned all that to tie in. That would be where it culminates. That section of our trail has elevated in importance to us. So
there's a lot of things going on. Man, you get your hands on everything.
So they pay me for.
The state capitol is quiet. So
yes,
you don't have
I'm
to be
glad I know I can
that.
start concentrate on this now.
Yes, God knows. So great. We've covered quite a bit. An hour and 20 minutes almost into the show, and quite a few people joined us. Thanks for the questions, everyone. I appreciate you listening.
And the last thing is those people who do listen, whether it's live or later on, the beauty there is they perpetuate the facts.
Yes.
And that's why I appreciate the conduit that this show provides for the city to be able to get some facts out about certain things, because it's hard for everybody to get information from the city all the time, and we don't know sometimes what's talking about. Verbally, you can get a lot of information out quickly, and so I appreciate people doing this, because I know that they talk to others and they can say, well, the source was listening to the show and hearing it, the words come out of the city manager's mouth.
And if I'm asking the wrong questions, I'd like people like Jeffrey and Amy and Matt to be able to be able to comment as we're Facebook Live, to be able to do that. Eventually,
we get some of our best suggestions directly from them, too. And again, Jeffrey met with me just a couple weeks ago and gave me some suggestions that I was like, and we may end up having some, a few tweaks to an intersection because of his observations.
So, we don't do things in a vacuum, right? I mean, that's what
we are only as good as our citizens and their input.
And, we got to just get the facts out correctly, too. And we may disagree. I mean, I disagree with the liquor store in the entertainment district.
But it's a fair perspective.
And as long as we have people listening to us, I'm glad it was pulled out.
Well, I was going to say, I will close with one thing, and that is, if anything, the citizens here should be very proud of their elected officials. They went into a meeting with some really highly emotional, complicated, and controversial issues that they did not even agree amongst themselves. And they did so and they disagreed and debated it in a very mature, responsible way. There was decorum met the whole time. I mean, that you'd be surprised how rare that is to have elected officials who are very much pushed by their constituents and how charged they are, and their own personal perspectives on things, being able to disagree with each other without being disagreeable.
And you know what?
So I was really proud to say that I was their city manager as I witnessed them do this. I mean, it was,
and they're actually guiding you. Where some people think it's all about Brian, what Brian wants, and Brian can only do whatever the city council really
correct. I mean,
wants.
So I'm there to support that. But anyway, I was just really proud to see them be able to do it in a way that, they got through it. Not all of them agreed with the outcome, but there's no hard feelings, no name calling, no afterwards
no
blogging about, my colleague on council is a piece of this or a jerk. Look, I was just proud to be a part of that whole process.
That's cool. It's always good to be civil. And by the way, I have 5-2 votes. I take a 5-2 vote every day than a 7-0 vote, because that just means, some people say, well, they're all on the same page. 5-2 votes to me, or 5-3 votes, or 4-3 votes. This means there's a good, healthy discussion going on, and that people don't have to agree on everything, and things happen. And that's a good way for that to work, I think.
You can still have that happen in a 7-0 vote. You can have good, healthy dialogue. There are some.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah, but you're right. Every vote being 7-0, there's usually something. I would agree.
So we're at the end of the hour. I want to thank everyone for staying with us in an hour and 20 minutes into the show. Next week, back-to-back city people. Next week, I'm going to have Mike Mason on the 31st, next Thursday at 12:30. He'll be here.
Who?
I know, right? The last time I had me and Mike Mason on was a while ago. It had to be over a year ago, I guess. But he's going to be sitting in that chair. We're going to be having a healthy discussion, and I hope you guys will show up again and ask questions you'd like to ask. We'll just be talking about visions, more than detail, because you're the detail guy, really, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, just be aware that he's the chairman of the board. His job is to think 30,000 feet.
Right, and that's what I want to talk to him about. I want to talk to him about the vision he has for the city, continued vision, where we're going, the nitty gritty. Maybe there might be some questions, but you're really the guy that we do.
Yeah, we're a great team. Oftentimes people, where are you going? Well, that's not my job. And then he knows when he's like, I'm not the right person to be talking about that.
And that's good. This is the way a company works.
Correct.
You have different people, different skills, different knowledge base. So we're going to be doing that next Thursday, 12:30. It'll be Facebook Live, as well as the podcast I'll upload tonight, that night. And today's podcast will be uploaded tonight. If you have any suggestions of future guests, certainly feel free to put that out to me. I'd love to be able to ask other people and have them on the show.
Or future topics for me.
Topics, yes, absolutely, because Brian's willing to talk about everything, as you see, and I love doing this every month. So if you have other questions for Brian, other topics, feel free, because we could talk about everything. This went on for over an hour. What else? I think that's about it. The Ed Hour, we're planning hopefully something in June that everyone will like about education in Peachtree Corners and the surrounding area. So I'll get back to you and let you know about that. Go to peachtreecornerslife.com, like the page, sign up for our e-newsletter. If you're not on Facebook, if you see this on a post on the website, because I can embed this video on the website, go to my Facebook page and like that. You'll know when we go live. If you have suggestions, certainly give that. Again, shout out to Prototype Prime for their use of the podcast studio. So we're going to call it a day. Thank you for being here with us.